This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
All right, well, McQueen, why don't you introduce yourself and tell me, because you are not quite as active in the Discord channel as some of our other guests, so give me a little more detail about yourself.
Yes. Well, hello. My name is Megan. Just kidding. I'm not going to do that.
You're not a cat.
I'm not your cat.
That's for damn sure.
My name's Megan. I'm not really that active in Discord. I know how to use it, but I don't know how to use it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I'm on a couple Wheel of Time servers, but I just kind of like pop in and check things every once in a while. If anything's going on, I might hop in, but that's why I'm not like super active. I'm on Twitter of Time a lot, like reading what's going on over there.
Do you want to reveal your character?
Oh, I don't have one of those.
Oh,
I'm
no.
just like Megan.
Oh, okay.
Like, my Twitter's just like Megan. And my handle isn't even my handle here. But, so, I mean, if you're on Twitter of Time, like, you might have seen me just throwing GIFs on everyone's friggin' tweets, because I'm that person. I always feel like, oh, I'm really funny, I'm gonna comment. No, anyways. So
the question is, do you get a lot of hearts or not?
Here and there, I'll say something funny, and then a lot of times it's just like, whatever. They were having that book club, like the official Wheel of Time on Prime was doing that book club a couple months ago. That was cool, like being a part of that. Okay. Like, so if anyone didn't know about that, well, if you have a Twitter, don't know when they're going to start it back up, but like at least follow Wheel of Time on Prime, like the official TV show thing, because they had like a book club, like they post questions. What
on Prime?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so like that was pretty fun. Like Sarah Nakamura was pretty active on that as well, and like she's on Twitter, so I like, you know, when she'll throw out some Wheel of Time stuff.
Yeah, she was pretty cool when I met her.
Oh yeah, you've met her. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've never met her, but she probably knows me as like that annoying girl on Twitter that
Excuse me. She knows me as that guy at Jordan Con who said hi once. So, you know, like that's about the extent. Yeah, that one guy. So I'm sure I stand out from all the other bearded dudes who showed up to Jordan Con in her mind. Just like a bright light.
Like, if you said like, oh, I'm the one that has that podcast, now that narrows you down to like 1 out of 20?
Really? Because I think it might be like more out of 1 out of 100.
Oh,
maybe
really?
150. I don't know.
Oh. I was gonna say sorry to those people that I don't know about.
I don't know.
Yeah, so this is just spiraling down into more and more awkwardness. So I'm gonna just rewind here. Okay, so my name's Megan.
Can I tell you something great?
Yes.
I can edit all that out, or I can leave it all in.
Exactly why I'm gonna like rewind and let's go. Okay. So, did I say my name was Megan? It's Megan.
It's Megan.
So let's see. Okay, I started reading Wheel of Time when I was like 15, 10th grade in high school. I was at my dad's house looking on the bookshelf there for a book to read. You know, like the only other books that I really read were like Harry Potter and such. So my brother comes out and he's like, what are you looking for? And I'm like, I don't know, like these tons of books that you have something to read. And he's like, oh, you should read this. And he pulls out Eye of the World. And I was like, what is this? He's like, it's a great fantasy. Yeah. He's like, you know, you like Lord of the Rings, like you'll like this. I was like, okay. So like he had been reading the books at the time and he was like getting all of them for Christmas and whatever. Funny story though, he still hasn't finished all of the books. And I finished all of them twice. So
that involves shaving his head and making him walk naked and throwing vegetables at him and yelling shame.
Yeah, I've pretty much done that. So
yeah, good.
He is working on it now though. He's been like, he picked him back up and he's trying to read and finish. But anyway, so he got me into the books. I used to do like those forum role play stories back in the day, and then when the books, well, actually, the books were still coming out. So like I started reading them in 2005, and then the last book came out in 2012, right?
Right. So you started reading right before Jordan's death.
Yes. And then I finished all the books that were out. And then I remember having to wait, I think, for like the last 3. Like, I think all of the Brandon Sanderson ones I had to wait for.
Yeah. Well.
So I mean, there were a lot of times when there was no Wheel of Time to be, into, I guess. But anyways, reread the books a couple years ago, and then I'm still on my 3rd reread. And I started listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast last year.
Wow. What a bunch of assholes.
So I caught up on all the episodes that I had already read, and then now I've just been, listening to each episode as it comes out. I'm on A Crown of Swords, but I haven't been reading much because I'm just trying to like catch up the podcast with my reading, so it's more like real time. But yeah, so my problem is, even though I've reread the books full through twice, there's a lot that I don't remember or just feel like I missed. Like listening to the episodes like of this podcast, I'd find myself listening and be like, whoa, what? I don't remember any of that. Or maybe you guys are just making stuff up. Who knows? But
I mean, I make a few things up. Don't get me wrong. I do enjoy lying occasionally to the audience. But I try and support everything I make up with some evidence, or at least say this is my headcanon,
Yeah. No, but so that's, I mean, I found that I was hearing things in your podcast where I was like, oh, like I either completely forgot about that or like didn't even realize when I read. I think there's something wrong with my reading comprehension. That could be why. But I'm sorry to say that I'm one of those people that like will find myself skimming a lot.
Sure.
So maybe that's why I miss stuff.
Right. And I think Jordan is a bit of a magician in that he is very good at hiding things in plain sight. He's very good at hiding the details between the sentences that you skim.
Yeah. And that's probably what, I'd be like, oh, he's talking about the color of the teapots. Like, let's skip ahead here. And then it's like, oh, well, next to the teapot was a letter that said Egwene was missing or, whatever. And I'm like, oh, well, that's why I missed it because, the teapots were blue. I don't know. So, yeah. So that's why, like, I'm following along and I'm listening to every podcast because I feel like in every chapter there's probably something that I forgot about or missed. Weird. And I've said this before, like, I think I was on, like, a Dusty Wheel website or YouTube thing. And I remember talking about, like I am the original Megwayne. I have not seen anyone else use that since I started using it, and I started using it back in like 2006 or 7. So, Egwene used to be my favorite character when I was 16 and reading the books for the first time because Egwene, oh my god, I can totally relate. But, Megan and Nynaeve just don't really fit together well, so... Megan Nynaeve.
No, it doesn't work. No, and I like the fact because you can do the 2 letters. You got the EG in both of them, and so you can do that. Yeah. Just cut off Megan, and
it was like, meant to be.
It's like Seth Theron.
Yeah.
Which should be. I think I might have to go with that one. I think I'm going to change my username. Seth Theron. Telemon.
Oh, my Neve. My Neve. Ah, my Neve. I bumped it on the chair.
Damn corners. Oh,
my knees.
Coffee table.
Sorry.
I got bruises on my knees.
My Nynaeve. That just sounds like Lan thinking about his love. Oh, my Nynaeve.
See, I'm thinking like my Nynaeve Twain.
Moving on.
I don't know. Anything else you want to tell us about yourself and who you are and what you like about the Wheel of Time in particular, like sort of how you relate to it?
I am a Libra, and
you're a Libra? Okay. Do you like long walks on the beach?
No.
And no,
not a fan of the beach. No, to be honest, no. More of a forest or mountain person. Love hiking.
Log cabins, snow.
I will say that finding Wheel of Time fans in the wild is like, in Pokemon, like finding a Pokemon. Like, I lived in South Korea for 2 years teaching English, and I met, two people who had read or were reading Wheel of Time. Out of all of the foreigners that I met there, that I had a conversation with, and then just like in my life here, I think there was like my one friend Ben who hasn't read all of it, and then like my brother, and like, none of my friends have read it. Well, just the one. Yeah, so, like, I don't know, like, I think that's why, you know, I might not be on Discord, but, like, even just, like, Twitter, like, having that community,
release.
like, people that, like, know Wheel of Time, like, why don't you know it? Stupid.
I find it helps to never shut up about it. That's, like, the best way to find people who've also read it. If you just, at the second you meet someone, if you be like, hi, my name's Seth. By the way, have you heard of the Wheel of Time? That's usually a pretty good opener to any conversation. Because then you can either dismiss them entirely as a person if they haven't, or, you know, you've met a Wheel of Time in the wild person.
Yeah, right? Like, I have a decal on my car, so I'm like, oh, maybe I'll catch people that way. And then, like, I have a gray Aja shirt, so I'm like, I'm going to wear this in public and see if anyone knows what it is, but no one never does.
Right. Or they don't say anything.
So I am gray Aja, fun fact.
Ah, okay. So you are a diplomat.
Yeah, and not so much like, I'm not like a politically charged person, but I'm like I would be like a lawyer or a mediator, I think. I said, like, working with, like, if I were ICED, I'd be working with leaders to, you know, write treaties and be a peacemaker, that kind of thing.
The mediator.
Yeah, exactly.
The one who's, I like that. That's good. That's good. I'm pure white, logic to a T. Maybe a little bit of brown, but to be honest, I'm not a big. To be honest, it's white. Like I like starting with basic facts and then moving to a conclusion, rather than doing a lot of research and piling a lot of details onto something. I'd rather start with a few ideas and then see the logical conclusion of those ideas. So
yeah, I think that, you know, there's a bit of, like, I find myself thinking logically a lot, but I was also just reading something in this chapter, like, using common sense. I probably use common sense more than logic. Not that
I don't have any of that. No.
Well,
nope. I hear it's common, but it doesn't mean it's universal. It's not called universal sense. It's definitely common sense.
Alrighty. Well,
do you, on that note, shall we break into Chapter 29, Fire and Spirit, and our symbol is the snake and the wheel.
I feel like reading-wise, there really isn't much, but she is super hungover.
She's super hungover. She's sweating hard.
Actually, a couple weeks ago, maybe like a couple months ago now, so a girl on Twitter of Time, posted, like, she's reading the books for the first time, and she posted this tweet, and I saved it for this episode because I think it's pretty funny. I'm looking for it now. Here it is. It's from Georgie Rose Reads, and this is the tweet. Anyway, Nynaeve singing while wine drunk is 100% my energy. And I was just like, I just read that! Nynaeve singing. So Nynaeve was singing.
And it makes sense. Like, we want to get her to relax. We want to get her to let go. Maybe a little bit of inebriation is going to help with that.
Yeah. I mean, most people feel that way about getting drunk. They can do anything when they're drunk, right?
Right. And you don't have to be angry, right? Can you imagine? She seemed like a happy drunk, right? Actually,
I mean, happier than she usually is, right?
Right? Yeah, I think Nynaeve would be a happy drunk.
It seems like it. I'm just looking for that sentence where she says, singing. Yeah. But anyways, she's talking about Theodrin getting her drunk and how she was walking away singing. Because singing. Like, she's
only
disgusted
somehow
with herself.
Nynaeve had ended up taking more than just a few sips. She did not think she would ever forget being carried back to her room singing, or remembering without going red in the face. Brendos had to know. Everyone had to know. Nynaeve wanted to writhe.
Yep, that's the one.
That's the one. Yeah, so Theodrin got her drunk. Kind of the same way the cute boy got Elaine drunk by filling up her one glass of wine that she had that night.
And that comes up later in the chapter, too, how...
that certainly does.
Elaine's like, I mean, it could happen to anyone. And Nynaeve's like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay. I guess something to note, like, in the very first paragraph is how Nynaeve has her spidey senses with the weather. So it's super hot, like the sun is shining, and she's like, her weather sense was nagging at her. Like, there should have
been. It has been a minute
and...
since we've heard about the storm coming, the weather sense that doesn't match the actual weather.
Yeah. And I guess it's just kind of like a reminder, like, hey, Bowl of the Winds stuff. Gotta fix this.
Do you think
weather.
it's Bowl of the Winds, or do you think it's Rand being abducted?
Oh, is that how it lines up in the timeline?
I mean, Bowl of the Winds is still a while off. We've got another book before that happens.
Oh, what I meant was, like, it's like a reminder that they need the Bowl of the Winds.
Gotcha,
and then also,
gotcha.
So I'm on Crown of Swords, so I'm, like, my mind is also on that book where they're actively searching for it. So I'm just thinking about that, like, in the like, oh, Nynaeve's thinking about, like, how the weather's all messed up, and it's freaking her out, and, like, oh, well, if there was this big terangrial thing where they could fix the weather.
Quick question. This is a reference to the previous chapter, but I was wondering if you had any ideas. The Shan symbol over their letters is two things like flattened bowls with a thick ornate line running from one through the other. And I was curious if you had any ideas. Two flattened bowls, kind of the way the Bowl of the Winds are described, with a line from one running through the other. Curious if you had any idea what that was referencing or what that was supposed to be. I know it's entirely putting you on the spot of something I didn't expect you to prep for, but
Is this like one of those things where they're in the, what's that palace, and they see like the Mercedes symbol and like a giraffe or something? Like they see things from like other ages? Is this like one of those things?
No, so this is, I'm sorry, I said Shan. I should have said Sea Folk. So the two letters that are sent to Rand have the Sea Folk symbol on them. And that Sea Folk symbol is two flattened bowls connected by a chain.
By a chain or a line?
Or a line. An ornate line.
An ornate line. I mean, yeah, I don't know is the short answer, but could it, because isn't the Bowl of the Winds like a Sea Folk thing? So maybe it's like their folklore, like maybe in Sea Folk, in Sea Folklore.
Why are there two of them? That's what I don't get. And why is there a ornate line connecting?
Is it ever hinted at that there are two bowls of the winds?
Oh, it's hinted at that there's like a network of bowls of the winds, that they're part of the reason that the power gets so funky after they use the bowl of the winds is they stress the hell out of it trying to control an entire continent's worth of weather. Because usually it's a network of bowls distributed over the entire continent. That's how they used to control the weather during the Age of Legends.
I wonder if the one bowl symbolizes the bowl of the winds, and the line comes out of that bowl and into the other bowl, and the other bowl is just like a symbol for the world or something. There's several weather control terangrial. Maybe there's a male bowl of the winds, and it would be better be done with a circle of females plus a mixed one.
Well, the one we see accesses both male and female. Yeah, it's their seal. And so, like, it seems like it really should be obvious. Like, it's not, like, supposed to be an obscure little fact. You know, it's just supposed to be like, oh, what did the Sea Folk put in their seal? Like,
also, a flattened bowl, I mean, it could be like a ship. Like a ship, you know, like a boat kind of looks like that shape.
That's kind of true.
So it could be like, you know, the first one is the ship with the Sea Folk, and the line coming out of it is the channeling going into the Bowl of the Winds, or, you know, a Bowl of the Winds. Good question. So Nynaeve is like, this weather's itching me. Yeah, timeline-wise, I don't know. I mean, this is definitely before... Actually, this has to be before Rand is abducted, because Egwene hasn't gotten to Saladar yet. And she leaves before he's put in the box, right?
Oh, yeah. No, and we came from him in the last chapter, and he is bouncing around between Caemlyn and Tyrion right now. Yeah. He actually, I just edited to Shatter Logoth, so he took a detour to Shatter Logoth, but he's still like just bouncing around between those two palaces before he gets kidnapped.
So I'm not sure in this instance Nynaeve's weather stuff is related to what Rand is doing. Maybe to someone else, though.
Maybe, yeah. So let's jump back into the chapter. We've got Nynaeve in Saladar.
Yes.
So we get some sort of, I want to say, environmental observations. If you remember back, Myrelle is giving her a really hard time because of Lan, because Lan's probably here. Mm-hmm. And Myrelle is quote-unquote testing Nynaeve, so she's thinking a lot about that. There's also a very tight timeline. We're seeing today would be the 11th scrubbing pots with 29 more to go. So we know that, like, remember they were punished for... Right. What were they punished for?
Good question. Okay, so
Who's
11 days in salad art.
Their tongues?
I mean, I feel like it's just something to do with... Was it because Nynaeve was eavesdropping?
Right, no, it's because they were... Basically, they criticized the Aes Sedai. Nynaeve had an outburst. And then later, we find out in hindsight that Elaine had just as much of an outburst as Nynaeve did. It was off screen, where she was, like, all arrogant and being like, real Aes Sedai aren't fucking cowards, you know? And, like... That didn't go over well, so they got 40 days of punishment. So that was after the Bubble of Evil, when with the circles that didn't go very well.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, the episode that you were just talking about that I listened to recently.
So it's been 11 days since the Bubble of Evil. That's what we can get from that.
And she's explaining the little tower like building now and the quote hubbub that's going on, even though apparently there isn't really anything going on. Said when Nynaeve first saw this room, it had a bustle about it, an air of something being done. A false air, then. Now it seemed almost slow.
Yeah, to me, that's... When I walk into an office and everybody's got their head down and they're just writing, that's because everybody is focused and getting work done. And that, I think, is the air that I'm seeing here. Whereas before, it was like everybody was being like, oh my god, we have to do something, running around, but no one's actually doing anything. They're just yelling about doing stuff.
Yeah, so now it seems like they're settling in to their little tower.
Totally settling in.
It seemed like she said, it was the feel of the White Tower. So now everyone's a little bit more used to being there and, they got their shit together, if you will.
Right. And they've got an army. They're getting the army ready and everything. Now, they are kind of settling in not to go anywhere. They're kind of, like, waiting for Egwene, and then they plan on, like, kind of manipulating her, and who knows. Like, there's all sorts of... Egwene definitely has to, prod them into moving, because they are there to stay. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of a bad thing. They're really settling into this...
Random...
Yeah, this location.
Town.
Yeah, and just like not going because it's what Shiriam wants, right? It's what the Black Ajah wants. They want the tower to stay split. They don't want to resolve it. They want to sort of establish a second competing tower in Salidar.
Right, and so this is kind of showing that, like, yep, they're starting to settle in. So you know what we need? A young girl.
A whole lot of shaking going on.
A young girl to come in and not be manipulated.
Right.
Yeah, so, Nynaeve is looking for Swan and Lyanna so she can practice healing on them, which kind of sets up what happens at the end of the chapter.
Totally. Because she's looking to just basically experiment on them and try and... Because she's not getting any of the miracles from Mokidian anymore. So she wants to basically create her own.
Yeah, and she says later, like, why did I let Elaine take on all of those discoveries?
Because it makes sense. If you go from, like, having a new discovery every 3 days to... having none, people are going to be like, are you like, did something happen? Did you just run out of ideas? Like, when things change, people are like, where's that fount of really cool ideas that you were coming up with? Which, by the way, the fact that they like expect her to keep coming up with new shit while keeping her as an apprentice or an accepted is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, and then, her block is like a big thing that they talk about in this chapter too. So I think that's
true.
Another reason why they're like, well, it's just, she can't channel on her own. That's why she's not doing very well. Speaking of which, I think, some more Aes Sedai should be working on that with you. Because Theodrin, she's not really an Aes Sedai.
That's a good point. Well, she's sort of the post-Aes Sedai.
Yeah, and that's...
Or post-accepted Aes Sedai, I mean.
Like, Brendas, who Nynaeve is talking to, says that straight out. Like, well, she's not really much higher than an accept... Or is that Nynaeve's thought that she says? Yeah, I'm sure Theodrin will find the key anyways, so yeah, Brenda says like, how's Theodrin doing with you? And yeah, here it is. If we took it in turns, working you all day every day might prove more fruitful than these informal sessions with someone who is, after all, little more than accepted herself. Woo.
Ouch.
Well, jeez. And then actually, one of my notes that I wrote down
Good thing Aes Sedai aren't arrogant.
I know, right? And she's a white. Actually, I was like, Brenda. So I was like, okay, like, what about this character? And everything I read was like, she's actually trustworthy. Like, she's actually a good Aes Sedai. She's not like a Black Ajah in hiding or anything.
Right.
But, she's still
She's a white. She is the emotionless.
Yeah.
White. But she is kind of a friend of Moraine. She was in that class. She was, one of the accepted she actually had Moraine's duty right before Moraine took over, and Guitarra Morosa had her foretelling. So if Guitarra had her foretelling a little bit earlier, Brendos could have come to the Two Rivers instead of Moraine.
I wonder how that would have changed everything.
An emotionless white? Yeah.
Get in the car, we're leaving. Moraine is like, well, no, trust me, it'll be all right. Yeah. So Brendos is like, doesn't sound like Theodrin's doing much.
Except getting you drunk. Can you imagine, these two kids, they're trying to break her block by drinking all night. Mm-hmm. I believe that.
Oh, little accepted girls. And Nynaeve's like, the Aes Sedai says that she's a little more than accepted herself. It was all delivered in a level tone without the slightest accusation, yet Nynaeve's face heated as if she had been shouted at. I'm sure Theodrin will find the key any day, Aes Sedai. She almost whispered. I was just like, she's pissed.
Yeah, she is.
I'll try harder, Aes Sedai.
Yes, Aes Sedai. Well, it's also embarrassment, because this is the one thing that Nynaeve knows she can't do, right? She wants more than anything else to channel at will, and she has to get help with this, and that doesn't go over well with Nynaeve getting help.
Oh, of course. Yeah, so Nynaeve having a flaw? No way.
Yeah, she's an independent woman. She don't need no help.
I wrote down all the different ways that I could find and remember, the ways that they tried to remove Nynaeve's block. So, the wine, and then the boiled cat fern and powdered mavin's leaf, the buckets of water and sleep deprivation. That's all I had. I mean, I guess that's not counting when she's on the ship with Swan, and Swan turns her upside down, right, and pretty much beats her ass.
Yeah, I'm not sure she's trying to get her to channel so much as just being her don't be disrespectful.
Or was she trying to make her angry so that she could channel? Is that what it was, maybe? But whatever.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. I'm not entirely... I just have to flash back to that and see exactly what she was trying to do in that situation. But, yeah, the idea that Nynaeve needs to accept the One Power and let go and give up control, right?
Yeah.
Nynaeve is not one to ever give up control. Ever.
No. And that's something that I wrote, too, a note that I wrote was, Nynaeve will never surrender to something. Her getting angry is her protecting herself. That's her mental block, her mental protection. I mean, maybe going back as far as saying she didn't want to be Aes Sedai. She didn't want to go to the tower. She didn't want to accept that she could channel, so her being angry about it is I guess if I have to.
Yeah, and I think it's all about losing the rock hard control, right? What are the two ways where you can let go of yourself? Well, you can either accept that things are out of your control, or you can get so angry that you are out of control. And I think that literally she has to get so angry that she essentially opens herself up to Saladar, that she's so out of control that she has to that she's not... All right, so here's an analogy, which may or may not be appropriate. Opening yourself up to the One Power is a lot like orgasming. And that's an analogy we've made before, especially the way the men tend to, have to control it, and women have to open up to it and all that kind of stuff. We talked, it's been a while since I brought that up, but that was an early thing that we talked about. And so in a lot of ways, Nynaeve is someone who is so in her head and thinking about orgasming that you have to distract her enough.
So that she can let her
natural body reaction take over and embrace the source.
Yep, and then she has to, think that she's dying to finally break her block.
Right. Well, and that's a whole other, just giving up. That whole,
Yeah, and it's really, even in that situation, it's kind of really, Nynaeve, you were about to give up and die? What's wrong with you? Knowing her, I can't believe she did that.
Well, I think at one point, we get a quote from her being hey, there's just some things in life you can't control. Drowning, I can't fly, I can't breathe underwater, and I forget what the third thing is. But it's you really have to convince her that there are some things in life she can't control, and she never really internalizes that message until she's literally underwater and can no longer fix her situation. Like, until it's really like, I am completely out of control. I am giving up control.
I feel like if I were drowning, I'd probably have that kind of breakthrough too.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine. Like, that scene is great. Like, when the whole exploding ship thing, but...
Right.
Oh, that was just so good.
He does a good job of giving Nynaeve time to come to that realization, because there is a pocket of air. I feel like in a lot of other things we're like, oh, this person's drowning, and they have like 60 seconds to come to this realization, and then you read 3 chapters of their thoughts, and you're like, okay. Like, I get that you want to have this like great moment and stuff and have them like realize, but like there's a bomb ticking, or there's something going on that like no one thinks this much in that amount of time, no matter how much you want to. Whereas she actually has a few minutes to like breathe some stale air and think about her situation and be like, oh crap, like I can't get out. I can go down and see the door of mud. There's no way out. Like, then I can come up and breathe some more of the stale air, and it gets a little worse each time. And she has minutes to sort of come to that realization.
That's got to be terrifying also, like if that happened in real life, to have like minutes to think that you're drowning.
No, as someone who swam through high school and college, like I love swimming and I love being in the water, but the idea of drowning terrifies me. That like...
Yeah, it's out of your control.
Yeah.
Oh.
So... I used to have, not nightmares, but dreams about, or just thoughts about being dropped off in the middle of the ocean and be like, I wonder how long I could swim before I drowned as a really good swimmer. Like,
and
how
just,
long
like,
could
get
I...
so exhausted that you can't swim anymore. Yeah, no,
right.
That sounds terrifying. Open water is not my thing.
Right.
I like pools. I love swimming in pools. But, like, you want me to go in the mid... Like, you know, at the beach? Fine. You're going to go out on a boat and then get in the water and swim? No. No. No.
Nope. Nope. Yeah, that's... you know, I don't think... I haven't left my continent over open... No, I have gone to Puerto Rico. I'm trying to think, like, if I've ever been over open ocean. Like, I've flown to Puerto Rico.
Okay. So what, like, you're saying, like, if the plane went down...
Yeah. The plane went down, and
this escalated very quickly.
Listen, these books give me an active imagination. Okay, it's not my fault. It's not my fault.
A plane over open water. Listen, I've been flying over open water many times. That's the last thing on my mind.
Really? What's the first thing on your mind?
Like not suffering from like a DVT. I could like get up and walk or like exercise my legs. Like I'm gonna get off this plane and have a stroke.
Oh, okay. So you're more worried about blood clots and...
yeah, or like the plane just exploding midair.
Right.
I feel like if a plane went down like over the ocean like that, like you're most likely it's on impact. There's just, you know, there's nothing really left by the time
unless you got Captain Sully going down, you know.
That's true. Yeah. Oh God. About like, dark tangent. One question I had is, why are Adelius and Van Deen here? I don't remember, like, are they just to show that they're with the Little Tower? Because weren't they, like, living on their own?
They were
like
on their own.
Kinda?
Yeah, but I think basically Moraine recruited them, and, like, they realized they needed to get back into events, that things were significant enough that they kind of wanted to stick their head and nose back into things. They need to be with, like, Matt, and there's the whole, like, revenge storyline where they end up with Egwene. Like, they become, like, they go with Matt and Egwene and become part of her retinue, I think.
Yes.
I don't know, this is bringing them back into the fold, right?
Yeah. Like, we remember these 2 old ladies.
Right.
And one of them is not happy at Nynaeve bumping into her.
And do you know which one's which?
Well, the one that she bumps into is apparently Van Deen.
Okay.
That's all I got. They looked enough alike to be sisters in truth.
Right. Well, because they are sisters.
Yeah.
Not twins.
They're truthfully sisters. And she looks like a hawk, apparently, Van Deen.
Maybe they've got a little bit of Borderlander in them. A little Saldaean.
Yeah, you know what this reminds me of, though? In the Harry Potter Goblet of Fire, when McGonagall is getting the kids ready for the ball, for the dance, and she's teaching them dancing. There's the one scene where she goes, like, I won't have you looking like a bunch of bumbling band of baboons. And, like, the way she turns her head and sniffs is just very bird-like. And that's what I imagine right here.
So you're imagining Adelius and Vandine as played by McGonagall.
Yes, by Dame Maggie Smith. That's just what I like, the gray hair and like just the hawk nose. Anyways, okay, so moving on.
No, right there with you. Yep.
So then what? So yeah, Nynaeve is like, I got a GTFO before anything else happens. Oh, she finds out that Egwene was finally allowed back into Tel Air and Riyadh, right?
Or is going to be.
Or yeah, is going to be. I guess it's not clear. Guessing why the others had stopped Myrelle from speaking was easy enough. If Egwene had finally been there in the heart of the stone, she was not to be told. So yeah, so she's back, or she's going to be back. Yeah, good point. And then Nynaeve just berates herself. Nynaeve Almera was in disgrace. Nynaeve Almera was scrubbing pots like a novice when she might have been at least a step higher than accepted. Nynaeve Almera was getting nowhere with Theodrin, and all her marvelous discoveries had dried up. Nynaeve Almera would never be Aes Sedai.
Nynaeve Almera needs to stop talking in the third person.
God. That's
it's much shorter.
And then she thinks about the boiled cat fern and powdered Mavin's leaf.
Right, because she's saying that, like, oh, she knew it was a mistake to give all these discoveries, all Mokidian's discoveries to Elaine. She knew it, and then immediately she's like, except it was my idea to do that. And, like, that's her sort of, whenever she lies to herself, she gets that sort of taste in the back of her throat.
Isn't that... Well, because, I mean, it alludes to that being used as a way to get rid of her block, is how I read it. But isn't that also when Nynaeve and Egwene are in the tower in Tel Air and Riyadh, and Egwene confronts Nynaeve and, like, puts her in her place? Doesn't she, like, make her eat that? Is that what she eats?
She doesn't. She threatens her with it. She never actually makes her drink it, but she does threaten her with it. Yeah. And that's now, and she threatens her for lying. That's why she comes. She's like, "You're lying to me, and if you keep lying to me, I'm going to make you drink this because you made me drink it for lying when I was a child."
That's right. I wonder what that tastes like. Like, what would that equate to in our world? Like, I don't even like what tastes bad. Like, what kind of tea tastes bad? Soap.
I'm thinking more like skunkiness, like
cat fern. Could that be like what's it called?
Yeah, if
catnip.
Yeah, maybe. But I'm thinking like getting sprayed in the mouth with a skunk.
Ugh. Oh, just gagged. Okay. I mean, you made it real. I'm talking about like herbs and spices here.
Also, I love this line here.
She yanked harder on her braid. That one.
Well, starting there. A soldier in an archer's flat helmet and padded jerkin slowed to look at her curiously, and she gave him such a stare of refined malevolence that he stumbled over his own feet and quickly lost himself in the throng. Why did Elaine have to be so stubborn? Why is Elaine the stubborn one here? What? Elaine's not... Yeah. So...
That's not the only one, too. Like, 2 paragraphs down, I wrote this one down to read because, like, come on. You know, when Tom comes up behind her, Tom Marilyn grinned down at her through his long white mustaches, sharp blue eyes twinkling in his gnarled face. Here's this, like, you know, Tom, like, oh, this jolly guy. He's so right. By the look of you, Nynaeve, I could almost think you were angry, but I know you have such a sweet disposition, people ask you to dabble your fingers in their tea. Oh, Tom.
Oh, Tom. I highlighted that. I was like, Tom, that's such a great, like, you're so sweet. Just stir your finger in my tea. It just sweetens everything.
Ask you to like, where did Jordan pull that one from? Is that like a Southern thing?
I don't know. I mean, they do have sweet tea in the South.
I know, you're just so sweet. People ask you to dabble your fingers in their tea. Yeah.
That's such a Southern insult. You're just so...
Bless her.
Hon, bless her. Bless her heart.
Bless her heart. Nynaeve is so stubborn.
So sweet.
Elaine, you know... Oh, Tom, my dad is back. I'm with Nynaeve on this one. Like, Elaine with the whole... you know, father figure Tom, like, it was, like, cute for, like, the first sentence. And now it's like, oh, God, okay.
Okay, enough with the daddy issues. We get it.
I was never a huge fan of Elaine. She obviously has her importance, and she's a good character. But there's a lot of times when I'm, like, with Nynaeve, like, will you just...
I like her arc of going from spoiled to less spoiled.
To a leader? Yeah.
Yeah, to a leader. To someone who, like... Yeah, and again, this is something where... So my theory about Brandon Sanderson is in 3 books, he took all of his characters through their arcs again. So oftentimes in the first of his 3 books, what we're seeing is the characters back the way they were in the first couple of books. And so you see her sort of revert a little bit and get a little more spoiled again. And that's where I think people get really frustrated with Egwene, because she starts to act spoiled again. And people are like, why are you doing that? And this is one of my few... I love Brandon. I love Sanderson. I love how he finished the series, but I do have criticisms of some of the things he did. And I think in book 12, he took a lot of the characters and undid some of the character progression that they had gone through, only to redo it in book 13.
I guess I don't really have good commentary. Like, I'm thinking, like, maybe because it was his first, like, he was getting into it, like, was he remembering the characters? It was almost like he was beginning with them.
Right. So that's what I think, is that, like, he progressed them forward in his mind, and, like, he really should have done some of that off screen first.
Like, at what point was that? Like, I wonder, was there a major setback in, like, the plot, and that's why they might have regressed a little bit?
No, I think it was literally just...
I
think it was Sanderson trying to get his head around some of these characters.
Which is fine.
Like,
I mean,
which is fine. It just, I'm not saying, like, he fucked them up beyond all belief, or it was a terrible job. I'm just saying, like, in that first book, some of the characters forgot some of the lessons that they had learned. Matt in particular.
Listen, I'm not there yet on my 3rd reread.
Yeah, sure. We'll get there. We'll get there.
And this podcast isn't there yet, so I definitely don't remember what happened.
So we learned that Julian and Tom have been basically scouting in Amadisia. They've been on a scouting trip.
Keeping their eyes on the White Cloaks, it sounds like, because, I mean, that they're really the major threat in that area for the Aes Sedai. But
right.
We find out that there really aren't a lot of White Cloaks around where Saladar is.
No, they're really bringing all of their troops into a central point. As far as I can tell, I did a little research into this. I think Pedro Nile is scared of Rand. And so his lion on the plains got a little out of hand. And so he's bringing all of his troops back into Andor. Also, he has the queen, right? So he thinks that he can take Andor with the queen. So he's gathering for that offensive.
And then the Prophet, too. Like, wasn't he trying to take care of the Prophet in that area? And that's another reason why they're around. Except for a strong force on the Tarabon border and the men he has trying to hold back the Prophet in the north, Nile seems to be gathering every last White Cloak around Amadisia.
So he's holding the Prophet back. That's just a holding force. He's not trying to wipe him out or anything. He's just holding him back. And then he's just like, yeah, you stay there. I have to deal with everything else.
You stay there.
So he's got a strong force on the Tarabon border because that's chaos. And then the folks on the border in the north because of the Prophet. And then everybody else he's pulling in because I think Camelin, right? That's where Randon is. He's got the queen. He thinks he's got a hole-in-one to take over that country. Yeah,
the White Cloaks are around there, and then Elaine, gets out of Tom that there's a rumor about her mother. So this part, like, I feel like Elaine is kind of, like, hopeful, like, I mean, it's just a rumor. Like, tell me, what is it? What did you hear? It's a rumor about my mother. Like, let me know. What is it?
Right.
And then he says it. It's like, it's just a rumor. They think that your mother is in the Fortress of the Light and that she's going to lead an army of the White Cloaks back to Andor. And I think it's not what Elaine wanted to hear. So she's like, oh, that's ridiculous. But I think part of her is still like, could she be alive? But doesn't want to show it and doesn't want to get her hopes up.
I think it's such a contradiction of everything her mother taught her that she's like, no, there's no way. She literally thinks so much of her mom, right? That's the thing. It's a little bit of hero worship. She thinks so highly of her mother that she's like, there's no way my mom would go to the White Cloaks. She is more principled. She's a better person than that, Yeah,
and she's kind of lacking, too, because I guess, like, she's kind of a prisoner of the White Cloaks. And she doesn't think of that as a possibility, which is kind of another, flaw, in Elaine's thinking. Like, well, if there's a rumor about her mother being in, like, with the White Cloaks, like, that's a very strange rumor. Everyone thinks that she's dead. but now everyone's saying that she's with the White Cloaks. Like, there might be something there. So, like, I wonder if Elaine is kind of like, I don't want to get my hopes up. Like, she's probably dead. Also, like, my mother would never be with the White Cloaks.
Right. And it seems like a very opportunistic lie for Pedro Nile to be spreading as well. Right? Like,
yeah, that's true, yeah.
It's like, of course, Nile is saying, like, we have a missing queen without a body. Of course he's going to say he has her. He probably has a lookalike or something that he's showing to people. Like,
yeah.
I believe that he's spreading that rumor, but I don't believe that my mother would ever stoop to that level and go to the White Cloaks. Like, I just don't believe it.
Well, yeah, and then in the chat, you know, saying like Tom would know how much truth that rumor has, and it's like, yeah, like Tom would know if he heard like a rumor that was just completely ridiculous. Like, he wouldn't even listen to it, pretty much.
And I think he says here that where he says everybody in Amadisia thinks. Like, he's not necessarily saying how true it is, but he is saying, like, everybody in Amadisia thinks this. So, like,
yeah,
either it's coming from Pedro Nile or she's really there. You know, somebody's making an effort for that rumor to exist.
Well, Elaine, now is the time to listen, because...
Right. Because he's right, and, you know, it would be really nice if you went and got your mother and took her back to, well, I don't... honestly, I'm not sure that she would be a good Queen of Andor anymore.
No.
With the compulsion and the way she betrayed people, like, I don't think people would follow her. I don't think she could come back as Queen of Andor.
Also, I mean, Elaine really can't do anything. Like, Nynaeve is trying to get Elaine to leave to go look for the Bowl of the Winds, and Elaine's like, no, we can't leave, meh. So I feel like if Elaine actually did believe a rumor that her mother was alive, like, maybe this is another way of her trying to stop herself from running off. Like, she thinks, like, if she knew her mother was alive, like, maybe she would leave Saladar. And so this is her way of, like, no, like, I can't leave Saladar. There's no way she's alive. Like, I'm not even gonna...
Why can't she leave Saladar?
Well, I guess she could, but, like, you know, a little later in the chapter, Nynaeve talks about, like, you know, like, let's go tonight, let's go to Abu Dar to find the Bowl of the Winds, and Elena's like, we can't leave them because Rand or something. Where is it? You know, I told Brigitte that we're staying. What good can we do, Rand, if they take us for runaways? So maybe Elaine thinks, like, you know, they have to become Aes Sedai, and they're not going to do that if they run away again. And if,
she's got a good point. Like, it is helpful that Egwene commands them to go off and do this.
Yeah, well, yeah, and then they have, like, the permission, so then, of course, like, okay,
they're not runaway Aes Sedai and all that kind of stuff. Like, how badly would it have gone if they didn't have the authority?
Yeah, like, they wouldn't have gone.
They used to browbeat the other Aes Sedai into doing what they needed them to do.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no way.
Right.
So now they have permission. It's like, yeah.
The whole thing with the kin would have gone totally differently. Like, oh man, like, they needed that permission.
They needed their permission slip. A little, like, a couple paragraphs down, Tabitha comes to, you know, collect Master Marilyn to go back and talk to the Aes Sedai, and I was like, oh, who's Tabitha? Who's this girl? No one. She's no one. She doesn't appear again. And also there's some confusion because when I look, like, on the Watt Wiki online, they have Tabitha and they have Tabia.
Mm-hmm.
So don't know if, like, they just wanted to change her name or if Tabia
is that a different character?
Else. Yeah, I was just looking at it the other day, and Tabia was the one that it linked to, like, that is referenced in this chapter. But that could have also been my mistake. But yeah, so anyways, Tabitha's no one. She doesn't show up again, I guess. Just a fetcher.
I think I talked a little bit about this in one of the previous chapters, that Jordan is starting to throw a lot of named characters at us that we never see again.
Right.
Which is not something he did in the first 5 books. Basically, if he named a character, it was someone who you would see again, or at least played a significant role for a couple of chapters in that section of the book. Now we get these one-off characters who show up, they get 2 lines, they get a name, and we never see them again.
Yeah, you know, they're like the extras.
It's happening a lot with the IL. Yeah. And so a big part of what I want to do is you know, just be like, yeah, don't care about this person. It's fine. They're just in this section.
Yep. So that's what I did.
Perfect.
I was like, nope, no one.
Yep, no one.
Does that microphone smell good? You want to say hi? Okay, anyways.
Not really. It's mostly aluminum and metal. And,
yeah, no.
I mean, a little bit of my own breath back in my face, but I'm getting used to that because of the mask, so Yeah, no, not that great smelling.
My microphone probably doesn't smell that good either, Jinju. Sorry.
Did your dog go up to the mic?
Yeah, and she like sniffed it, so I don't think you could hear it though. I don't think it was close enough. So yeah, so Tom goes off. Nynaeve and Elaine like apologize to each other. Oh, okay, so they talk about how Brigitte told Uno not to give them horses to leave.
Right.
Oh, also, Nynaeve notices that Elaine isn't wearing the bracelet, the Adam bracelet.
And I think Brigitta's like, running away is going to be a bad idea for you guys. You don't want to be runaway novices. Like, you've already messed that up a couple of times. I know you're used to being independent, but like, if you go off on your own now without permission, you are never becoming full Aes Sedai.
Yeah, like, don't be dumb. And Nynaeve even says, like, oh, Elaine's got, like, her own nice little family here. A father and Tom, and an older sister and Brigitte. Well, Nynaeve is an orphan, so maybe that's why she's like, must be nice.
And again, I love drawing parallels between Nynaeve and Matt. And I was talking recently about how Matt sort of has a found family in like Nelisian and a little bit in Brigitte and Elaine and all this kind of stuff. And I feel like this is the other half of that family, with Nynaeve forming her own sort of found family,
which is Elaine and Nynaeve bounces around a lot. I feel like, does she? Like, obviously, like, all the Two Rivers people, but when you think about, like, Elaine, definitely.
Yeah.
Not on the end, though.
No.
Not even Min. Like, obviously, none of the Aes Sedai, really. Just Lan, but, like, they're never together. Anyways, right? She's, like, with Elaine most of the time, and then she's with Rand towards the end.
Right.
And, except, Rand is a Two Rivers, like, Rand is Nynaeve's family, practically.
That's sort of what I think of. Is I guess she is sort of the mothering figure to everyone from the Two Rivers. She bounces, and including Elaine. But
I had a question too, like, and not necessarily kind of a hypothetical question, but like, what did Brigitte do to Mokidian? Because Elaine was like, I had to take it off. Oh my god, she's like, Brigitte had the right, and it hurt. She told her to say she fell down some stairs. Like, what did you do?
I assume beat the shit out of her. Like, I don't know what happens when you fall downstairs, so, right? Like you get a lot of body bruises.
She said something she didn't think Brigitte would hear.
Yeah.
What did she say? She talking shit?
That's what I assume is she's talking shit, right? Because I'm guessing there's something like, well, I yanked you out of Teleron Riyadh, something like that. Like,
oh, maybe it was something like to Brigitte.
Right.
I'm thinking like maybe she's just mumbling under her breath about like these bitches. I got to do their laundry.
No, yeah, maybe.
But yeah, maybe. Oh, that would make more sense. That it was like something against Brigitte. Like, oh, how's it like to be in the real world? And she was like, I'm sorry.
Well, how does it feel to be dying slowly and ripped away from your lover, bitch? And it's like, what? I think I heard that.
I'm sorry. It's just Elaine's like, I had to take it off.
I had to take it off. Yeah. I remember I was a teenager and I was trying to teach swim lessons and I had no idea what I was doing. And I was like new teacher giving these kids, they're like 6-year-olds. And after about 20 minutes, one kid turns to the other and goes, I wish we had the old teacher. And I was like, what? Excuse me?
And that's when you're like, I wish you did too.
Yeah, I'm like, I was like, yeah, me too. I'm really bad at this.
I wish I had the old students.
Right? Because I was thinking, I'd been a swim coach for teenagers, and they're like, oh, that means you know how to teach 6-year-olds how to swim, and I was like, no, it doesn't. Like, everyone I'm given to already knows how to swim, and I'm just working on strokes and teaching them how to like swim laps and work out. Yeah. I don't know how to teach someone how to swim.
I don't know how to teach someone to not die when they go in the water.
Right.
What?
Right. Like, that's not a good thing to be trusting me with right now.
Yeah, don't trust me with anyone's life. I don't want that responsibility.
Right. Please no. Although I was a lifeguard at the time, so I was like, I mean, I can grab them, but like, I don't know how to teach them to swim.
Yeah, I mean, like blowing in their face though and drop them in the water. That's a skill.
Yeah. Are you supposed to tie their hands and feet together before you do that, or?
No, that's just what Brigitte does to Mokidian.
Or does that interfere with them getting the weights off their ankles?
Are you trying to see how long they can hold their breath? What if they stop moving?
It's an interesting graph because it's really saddle shaped, right? Like, you know, a lot of people can only hold their breath for a few minutes, but there's some of them that can hold their breath for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, that's crazy. No.
Yeah, and they never come up. It's amazing.
Nynaeve. So, yeah, speaking of Nynaeve, I like the part, like, right after that. So, this is where they're starting to... This is where they're starting to, like, apologize to each other. Like, Elaine's like, I shouldn't have laughed at you. And Nynaeve's like, it's okay. Like, you had every right. I was drunk.
Right. I was drunk, and I dunked your head in water, so you had every right to dunk my head in water. So now we're even?
It could happen to anyone. Nynaeve felt her own cheeks heating. When it had happened to Elaine, she dunked the girl to wash away the wine. You should have done whatever you needed to sober me. It was quite the oddest argument Nynaeve could remember, with her insisting she had been a total fool and deserved whatever came of it, while Elaine made excuse after excuse for her. Nynaeve did not understand why it felt so refreshing, taking all the blame on herself that way. I don't know why, that just, like, also made me giggle. Oh, Nynaeve.
I mean, that is her journey to awareness, right? This ability, and to be honest, I was thinking that moment for her, that, like, on the couch psychological, like, oh my god, taking responsibility feels good, leads to her being better at delving and leads to the healing of Logain.
Yeah, and just being, like, a better, like, I hate to say Aes Sedai, but, like, a better woman, maybe?
A better person.
Yeah, so...
Being able to take blame, being able to say, I made a mistake. Yes, that was my fault. You know, like, that's a huge deal for Nynaeve, and that's not something she does very often.
It was quite refreshing. She couldn't recall ever doing that before. I made a complete fool
of myself. A few sips, Theodrin said, a cup, and she emptied the pitcher. Speaking of which, my beers are empty.
It's like almost 11 p.m. here, so I drank earlier. I had some apple cider with whiskey.
Ooh, apple cider whiskey?
Yeah, I gotta, like, water it down, though, because, you know, the apple cider's so sweet.
Sure.
Water it down, heat it up, and then put the whiskey in it. It's like a hot toddy, but like a hot apple toddy. Mm-hmm.
Do you add any cinnamon or spices or anything to that?
No, I'm too lazy for that.
God.
Come on. So that was earlier. I brushed my teeth, and now here we are. 10:50.
And you don't have to add honey or anything to that, because it's already sweet enough.
Yeah, no honey. You know what is good, though, is like a true... Well, I guess it's still not like a true apple or... A true hot toddy is just like whiskey with water, lemon, and honey. Or did I do? I might have done like ginger tea. I think I actually might have made it with ginger tea.
Yeah.
And then all the other things. You know what? I'm not a fan of hot toddies. Like, I've tried them, and I didn't like the one that I had.
But that is a hot toddy.
Yeah. Isn't it?
Like, I don't like hot toddies. I just like these other kinds of hot toddies.
I like my hot toddy, not anyone else's.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, is a hot toddy, like, what kind of tea is it made with? It's not made with ginger tea, is it?
I mean...
Just tea?
Tea, whiskey, honey. Like, I don't think it needs to be anything special.
The lemon juice adds a little bit, too.
Yeah, lemon. God, I want to say Earl Grey.
Earl Grey. It sounds like it would be, because it's very Scottish whiskey.
If only just in honor of Patrick Stewart. Earl Grey hot.
Earl Grey, that sounds like a reference to something that I don't know.
Star Trek.
Oh, okay. You know, I didn't really watch Star Trek.
That's Captain Picard always ordered Earl Grey hot out of the replicator.
Oh, okay.
That was his drink of choice.
I got it.
I don't think he got it as a hot toddy, although, you know, that would have made the series a lot better if every time Picard ordered an Earl Grey hot, it actually was a hot toddy, and we didn't know it. It had whiskey in it, and he was just drinking the entire time.
I mean, so, yeah, it was Patrick Stewart, so it was?
Well, fair enough, yeah.
So, so they're apologizing to each other, and then Nynaeve's trying to convince her to run away, and I think that is when Elaine is like, well, Brigitte might have told him that, you know, not to give us a horse. And Nynaeve's like, what?
And he knows, that's why Uno was giving me the stink eye.
What? The man knew.
Yeah. Told me not to run away.
Was Nynaeve the only name Brigitte had mentioned to Uno, or was Elaine perhaps included?
And so, to me, this entire chapter, right, everything we've read up to this point, all of this stuff is just to piss Nynaeve off enough for the next section. The offer of wine would have been enough. Nynaeve barely suppressed a wince if she had needed more. Thinking of Uno, the fact that he was male was enough. No need to pull up any of her anger from the little tower. Thinking of it added its bit, though. The true source was suddenly there, an unseen warmth just out of sight. So that whole, she was surrendering to it. Burn Theodrin, not surrendering to it.
Sit down.
Yeah. So this whole thing, this whole chapter, is just a wind-up for Nynaeve to be pissed off enough to do what she does with Logain.
Well, yeah, and then also, what I was thinking, too, is her mentioning how she's not making any of these discoveries. Like, why did I let Elaine take them all? So it's like, now this is her genuine, remarkable discovery. Not through Mokidian. This is all Nynaeve being Nynaeve. So yeah, it's kind of 100% like wind it up.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I don't really have many comments about like her getting into it. I did have a question though. So, Nynaeve mentions how she's like, I don't want to put my hands on him, even though it works better that way. So I was like, I wonder why it's better, like in the healing process, to be touching skin. I thought like maybe it's like an X-ray versus a sonogram. Like,
it's something we've seen repeatedly. I mean, the whole taking like Rand's head between her hands. Yeah. Moraine does it all the time. Nynaeve does it. Like, it's very much there's something about physical touch that makes delving work better.
Yeah, and it definitely makes sense. I'm just like wondering, like scientifically, because this is science, obviously. This is science.
Nothing about this is made up. Nothing.
Yeah, just one of those things. I was like, but why does she have to touch him? And then she realizes that she does grab his head, and she didn't even realize that she did.
She's distracted. I kind of think of it as like someone playing like a word puzzle, just like playing with the pen or something, or like messing with the paper. Like her hands are doing what they need to do while her mind is thinking about the solution to a complicated problem.
Yeah.
Or if you ever watch like a programmer work or someone who's like deep in thought, oftentimes they're not fully conscious.
Yeah, they're just so focused. Like, she's so focused on it. She's not even like, when it comes to channeling, you're not even really looking at anything but the weaves, I guess. So she's probably not even looking at him. She's probably like looking through him at her weaves, or like, looking in his body, however it works with healing. And then I
actually watched an interesting YouTube video recently, which is applicable. It was handing objects to people who were working. And it was literally just a guy going around handing random objects to people in his office who were in the middle of whatever task they were doing. And he's like, it turns out people will take anything you hand them in the middle of working. And that's sort of the same thing where like they're just so distracted, you like hold something out and they'll reach out and take it.
Yeah.
And then it'll be like, why am I holding a toilet seat? How did that happen? Like, I don't get it. Like, and that's sort of the mood I think that she's in right now, where like essentially Logain's head is the toilet seat, and like she's just
and she's grabbing
she's just like grabbing it because like it's there.
Yeah, she's
and
like, you know what, burn it. Like, I'm trying, but it just works better this way. She's like, yes, it was better with physical contact. The impression's sharper. So she's like, you know what, just gonna grab his head. Just gonna do it.
Obscure was correcting me. It's when people are on the phone, not when they're working. That's what the video is.
Oh, well, I mean, I guess like if they're on the I see wife on the phone. Because I was gonna say, if someone is at work and they're on the phone, then I guess they're working.
I saw the one at the work. I saw work on the phone, not wife on the phone. But I'm guessing it was a similar TikTok thing. Anyway.
So yeah, and like, if Elaine had said anything to Nynaeve at this point, actually, I think she does, doesn't she? Oh no, that's. Oh yeah. How can you do all of that at once? I could not keep track of half of it. Hush! Nynaeve murmured. She's not even like, just shut up.
How are you doing all that at once? Well, first of all, I'm not talking to you, bitch. Like, that's number one. Shut the hell up.
How are you doing all that? Shut up.
Yeah, shut up. I'm not. I'm busy.
Maybe if you stop talking, you could concentrate too. Yeah. So like the readout that I had recorded was pretty much all of this, like 585 and 586, because it's just literally her being like, yes, there's a hole there. And then she's like talking herself through with Egwene and Rand, and I was thinking, like, I wonder if her thoughts about Rand and Egwene are what led her to it. Like, I wonder if they kind of influenced, like, what she was doing with the weaves. I don't really know how, but that was just a thought I had.
Yeah, and again, it's the distracted thinking about one thing while your hands are doing something else. If you've ever been, like, working on something. I really do think Jordan, this paragraph is one of my favorites in all of his writing, because it really portrays, it's two paragraphs interweaved. What's going on in her head, and then what she's doing side by side. Yeah,
and it really is like that. Like, what is Myrelle going to say? Would she keep back a message from Egwene? That emptiness, so small she could pass right over it, was vast when she slipped the...
Can I get you to read the italics, and I will read the non-italics?
Ah, okay. Yeah, let's try it. What is Myrelle going to say? Would she keep back a message from Egwene?
That emptiness, so small she could pass right over it. It was vast when she slipped the flows inside, immense enough to swallow them all.
If only I could talk to Egwene. I'll wager once she knows the Tower is sending an embassy to Rand, and the Aes Sedai here are just sitting on their hands, she'll help me convince Elaine we've done all we can here.
Vast emptiness. Nothingness. What about what she had found in Suan and Leanne? The feel of something cut. She was sure it was real, however faint. Men and women might be different, but maybe.
All I need to do is talk to her somehow. She'll see that Rand would be better off with us there. Elaine will listen to her. Elaine thinks Egwene knows Rand better than anybody else.
There it was. Something to cut. Just an impression, but the same as in Suan and Leanne.
So how do I find her? If only she'd pop into our dreams again. I'll bet I can talk her into joining us. The three of us would do much better with Rand. Together, we could tell him what we learned in Tel Air and Riyadh. Keep him from making some wool-headed mistake with the Aes Sedai. She'll see that.
Something about that cut. If it was bridged with fire and spirit, so...
It was the slight widening of Loghain's eyes that told her what she had done. Breath froze in her throat. She backed away from him so fast she stumbled over her skirt. Nynaeve? Elaine said, sitting up straight. What is the A heartbeat. And Nynaeve had all of Saidar she could hold, redirected into a shield. Go find Shiriam, she said hurriedly. Nobody else but Shiriam. Tell her... She drew a deep breath that seemed like her first in hours. Her heart was speeding to beat galloping horses. Tell her I've healed Loghain.
Love it.
I'm pretty sure
I enjoyed that back and forth.
Reading... Yeah, that was cool.
That was good.
I was like, the first time I read that, I was crying. I was like, oh my god, she did it.
But yeah, no, the fucking healing Loghain, like, we have this moment where she does something that no one in history has ever been able to do. Ever. Not in the Age of Legends, not in modern times.
And she's just like, she's working while, like, browsing Instagram and does it. Like, okay.
Right, yeah, totally.
Not even, like, I mean, she's focused on it, but not even fully, like, she's, like, thinking about other shit.
Don't we do our best work when we're focused on other shit? It's like you come up with your best ideas in the shower.
Maybe some people. I know what you mean, though. In the shower, on the toilet, I don't know, cooking breakfast.
Well, walking the dog. Like, when you're not actively thinking about what you're doing, when you walk away from your desk, that's when the best ideas come to you. And that's what happened here, is she was so focused on Suan and Leanne when she was healing them, she was in her own head. But when she was healing Loghain, she was sort of distracted, and her subconscious just went ahead and healed him for her.
Like a Taviran. Like he needed to be healed for some reason.
For some reason, yeah.
I did, so like one of the 2 YouTube videos that I made about Wheel of Time was about the 5 powers, and something that I learned while doing research for that is that like fire and water and earth and air are like opposite powers. So, like women are generally strongest in water and air, men in fire and earth. So I thought it was interesting the fact that she healed him with fire and spirit. Spirit is one that is shared between men and women, like somewhat equally, like some women are strong in it, right? So spirit makes sense. Like spirit seems to want to be the one that's most connected to the idea of channeling to me, like your spirit, your soul.
Totally.
So I thought,
right. That's the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, like we know that men can fully heal women and women can fully heal men. And that's why when Nynaeve heals Swan and Lyanna, they're not to full strength. But I also thought, is it because she used fire and spirit for Logain? She used the same fire and spirit for Swan and Leanne. If that is part of the reason why.
But if she'd used, if she used like water and spirit instead, that would have worked better.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, or even when an Ashaman heals an Aes Sedai, or a female channeler, I wonder if they use. I looked this up. I looked up Damer Flynn is the one that is good at healing, or maybe not. I think it said that he was good at healing, severing, and stilling, but I couldn't find like what weaves or what powers he used. So I'm just thinking that maybe for him to heal a female channeler, maybe he used spirit and water or spirit and air.
I would disagree, because I think the problem, like, he builds the bridge with fire and spirit, and I think they both build the bridge with fire and spirit. The problem is the attractiveness and the repulsiveness of Saidin and Saidar.
Yeah.
Right? So, and we see this in the cleansing, right? Rand uses the fact that Saidin and Saidar repel each other to sort of accelerate the cleansing by pushing a bunch of the male half of the source through the female half of the source, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that they repel each other helps him accelerate that and siphon off a bunch of the taint, which we'll talk about in another episode.
Right, a little later on. But yeah, it's definitely that Saidin and Saidar being two halves of one whole, like you need.
Right, and they repel each other. Whereas when you have two identical powers, they attract each other. So imagine you build a bridge out of ice and you want to slide something across it, you have no resistance. Whereas if you build a bridge out of something that's sticky, you have that resistance. I think of it like a wire, right? Like a superconductor versus a wire with a high resistance. And so essentially she's bridging that gap, yes, but when it's the female half conducting the female half, it's very sticky. It takes a lot of power just to get across that gap, and that's where all the power goes. Whereas when you have the male bridging that gap, it's like a frictionless superconductor surface. So yes, magnets.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like magnets. It's like because magnets.
Yep. Opposites attract, like relationships. That's not true.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about Sliders. I really enjoy it, but like going back and watching it right now, it's so dated. I can't watch more than an episode or two at a time before I'm like, oh god, this is bad.
Even like movies from like the early 2000s, I'm like, let's not.
But then there's stuff like The Matrix and Star Wars, and like, there's things that are from the 70s and 80s that are practical. Like
bad CGI but still good.
No CGI, practical effects, right? Dark Crystal, like puppets. That stuff is good, but stuff like Sliders and Sequest, the stuff that's more CGI based in the 90s, it's so dated. The CGI looks anything that depended on CGI in the 90s. It reminds me a lot of how we can get high definition footage from the 70s and 80s because we used film, but once we switched over to digital recordings, all of a sudden we were only recording in 480 by 240. So we had these terrible, we can all go back and scan the original film and get HD quality, but there's a period of time in our history where our quality almost gets worse because we didn't use film. So there's no high def version for us to scan. Obscure, right? Farscape is still good because puppets, right there with you.
I don't know if I know what Farscape is either.
That's why Farscape is better than Babylon 5, because they use puppets rather than CGI.
It's not Babylon 5, but
Farscape was a 1990s to early 2000s Jim Henson production in Australia about an astronaut who gets lost in space by going through a wormhole. Wow. I'm sorry.
The feeling is just like a lot of like all of these are sci-fi. Were there a lot of shows that were sci-fi in the 90s, or just like all of the shows that we've all seen are sci-fi?
I mean, there weren't that many. The reason the 90s sci-fi show wars are so vitriolic is because there were so few. So everyone has their favorites, and everyone compares everything to everybody else. And it's like, you only have like Farscape and Hercules and what's the one with the pyramids where they go into the desert and travel through a big circle?
Like TV show?
Tabernaska has me. Stargate, thank you. There just weren't that many choices.
Oh, Andromeda, I've heard of that one.
Andromeda.
I never really watched a lot of, like in the 90s, I was watching Nickelodeon and Disney.
This was Sci-Fi Channel. So if you watched 90s Sci-Fi Channel, there was this like very small group of shows that were on 90s Sci-Fi. Does anyone remember Earth 2? It had like 1, maybe 2 seasons back in like late 90s. 1 season? Yeah. Earth 2 was my shit, man. Earth 2, I loved that show. My family, I remember Friday nights with my dad, we used to always have a sci-fi or fantasy TV show we used to watch. So, Tim Curry was in it? I had no idea. I have to go back and watch it now.
I didn't know.
So for a while, Earth 2 was the show, and then eventually we switched over to X-Files. But Friday nights, I remember good sci-fi.
I think, like, in the 90s, I lived with my grandma a lot, so she probably, she was making me watch Touched by an Angel, not sci-fi shows.
All right, show me on the doll where the angel touched you.
That and, like, has anyone seen Xenon Girl of the 21st Century? That was probably, like, the first... That's the first sci-fi
yes, I have
movie that I can think of. Like I've been trying to think of like shows and movies that I watched that were sci-fi. My dad would watch Star Trek late at night, and I just remember I'd like sneak out of bed and be like, "No, I'm going back to bed." But I was also like 7 years old.
How stoned was I when I downloaded Xenon Girl of the 21st Century?
Did you download Xenon the sequel?
No, just the original. But I watched this. I remember watching this and being embarrassed
Z3.
when I watched it. I was like, I hope no one ever discovers that this was on my computer at any given point in time.
Zoom, zoom, zoom. That's the song.
I'll take your word for it.
Well, apparently you know because you downloaded it. What, Jinju? What do you want? You just gotta go out and poop. Just being...
Hold on. Timber's being a butt, so...
What's he doing? My dog's like asleep on the bed behind me, so...
He's just whining. Well, it's because the door is shut, and he wanted in when he was outside, and now the door is shut that he's in, he wants out, because, God forbid, I shut the door while I'm actually recording.
Oh, see, well, at least he, feels independent enough where he can be outside the room from where you are. Like, my dog, Jinju,
he can't.
She's got to be in the same room. Like, if I walk to the bathroom, she's following me. Where are you going? Oh.
So I should rephrase that. He wants to be able to leave the room, but he's not going to, right?
She's like, "Was this door closed? Can you open the door?" Okay, now
please open the door. Good. Yeah, okay. And then he'll go lay back down on the bed, So, after he chases maybe he might chase the cat a little bit. Oh. They have a fun relationship.
Well, that would be a great interjection, I think. Who wouldn't like that?
Yeah, she he got up in the middle of the night last night because I went to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And he got up to follow me, because, of course, he got up to follow me. And then on my way back, he, like, got stalled, and I went in bed. And then I heard him and the cat, like, I heard her hiss and go, and him go, and yelp and come running back to bed. I was like, you should get for bothering the cat at 3 a.m. She's awake, and you're not.
This is my time. You get out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
Go sleep, you dog.
Get out of here. My apartment.
This is my time to be awake. I don't know why that's my cat voice.
That's a great cat voice.
Your cat now has 2 voices. It's like, get out of here, and get out of here.
The second one really kind of works for her.
Get out of here. This is my time to be awake, you dog. I run the house.
She's such a baby. She loves being picked up and, like, held like a baby and getting her belly scratched. And she's not like that kind of cat that's like a trap.
Oh, yeah, like you start petting and it's like...
No. She actually, like, wants to be picked up, and like, you know, the harder I'll take her head and just hold it in my hand and just like squeeze it, and she'll purr harder.
See, those are the cool cats. I've
Those
known
are the really cool cats.
only several cats that were that cool.
When I go to the bathroom, she headbutts me until I pick her up and pet her.
Oh,
Which is cute and annoying at the same time.
also like, yeah, I just gotta pee, man. Oh, what a good girl. All right.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?